Hello, everybody. Всем привет. Today, I want to talk about movement. The hero movement points. Uh, as the heroes move around, they they're limited to a certain amount of movement points per day. And the initially, when I did this version of the program, I just set it to 100 and made each step count for 10. Didn't matter diagonal, horizontal, vertical, just to have something working so I could test it around and test out the routing, for example. When I did the initial equal weight for diagonal steps versus vertical and horizontal steps, I was getting some interesting zigzag effects, and so I added like a tiny penalty to vertical or sorry, I added a tiny penalty to diagonal steps to make it more likely that it would form nice paths like this or this and or this. So, because otherwise it was doing some strange zigzagging things without that. Since I have implemented the correct algorithm for computing hero movement points, it seems to function a lot better. Occasionally, I will still get like a strange direction, and I need to actually test if that is consistent with the game or not. So this is pretty close to done, but there's still just some more testing because there might be some strange edge case in the hero movement. But anyway, I'm just going to go over in the notes rather quickly. And there's this nice website, acidcave.net. They have a lot of documentation on different elements of the game. I've only found one mistake so far, which was the Warlock's sight radius. But all of this still probably does have to be double checked. But initially, for hero movement, if you have basically the slowest unit in your army is going to affect your base level of movement points. And then each tile type has a slightly different cost. Actually, not each tile type, but snow, swamp, and desert are more expensive than grass, dirt, lava, and water. So snow and swamp are a little more expensive, and desert is brutal. Desert is twice. So snow and swamp are 1.5x, and desert is 2x, unless you're the barbarian. So each hero has a specialty, like a bonus. The barbarian has no terrain penalties. So for the barbarian, there's no penalty on snow, swamp, and desert. Those are the same as lava and grass and dirt and water. The warlock gets a little scouting bonus. The knight gets a morale bonus, and the sorceress gets double movement on water. And the artifacts will affect your movement. Basically, these the boots of let's move to grass. So we can see that the traveler's boots add 12 movement points. The Nomad boots add 24 movement points. So but these only work on land. The Traveler's Compass, or actually, I think it's the True Compass of Mobility. Sorry, Traveler's Boots and True Compass of Mobility. This adds plus 20 movement points on both land and sea. And then the Astrolabe adds well, it doesn't add anything on land, but if we move to water, that adds 40 movement points on water. So that's a very useful artifact for water levels. And the Lighthouse adds 20 movement points. And then, of course, if we have nothing, we just have a Phoenix, but we have a Sorceress. Sorceress gets her movement points doubled. So suddenly the Lighthouse adds 40, The Astrolabe adds 80. And if you gave her a traveler's compass, that'd be 280. So with the basic number of movement points can be as low as 40. That's like the absolute minimum. And for a sorceress on water with both artifacts and the lighthouse, she can move up to 280 movement points. So that's, divided by 4, that's like 70 tiles. That's almost across the entire map in a single turn. You see this diagonal or vertical horizontal moves. The maps are 72 by 72, so she could technically move 70. She can sail across the entire map. Now, what happens in the rare case in this game where you actually can get multiples of the same artifact? In that case, I actually think that you could get multiple astrolabes, and those that would just massively increase her number of movement points, and she would be able to go, I think I computed the max as 1160 movement points. So she could sail around the entire map, which would be pretty brutal if you had a sorceress patrolling the waters with a bunch of astrolabes and a bunch of like phoenixes. She could catch anybody on the sea, which would be pretty cool. And I may end up making a map that has that as like some sort of villain character. That would be quite fun, a pirate queen of sorts. But anyway, I made some notes. This was very handy to have this little calculator and this explanation. So I want to give a little shout out to the Acid Cave guys, because this did help me compute this rather quickly. To feed this information into the AI, though, I needed to create first a map of the creatures and how fast or slow or whatever they are. Note that ghosts are medium and you can't actually recruit ghosts in Heroes 1, but just in case somebody hacked their garrison or their hero to start with ghosts, this is the effect that the ghosts would have on your initial movement points. And I recompiled the tables to show kind of basically to make it easier for the AI to build a lookup table. So there's just a few slow creatures, there's just a few fast creatures, and most creatures are actually medium speed. I copied a version of this table from the website here, and then I fed in like the tile record. So of our 10 byte tile record, this first value is, sorry, we skipped all the way to the bottom here. The first value is the tile type, and that corresponds to these different image layout characteristics, which I have here. So this is what it actually looks like. So you can see 0 to 19 are water, then grass, then snow, then swamp, then lava, then desert. And then there's just a few, I don't know why there's only 4 dirt tiles at the end, but maybe all the transition tiles aren't needed because all the other tiles are transition tiles. So maybe dirt is like the special case that everything else transitions to dirt before transitioning to another type. So anyway, I gave it that information so that it can detect, okay, what is the actual ground type that we're on, and we need to use that to compute the movement points that we're going to get. I also need to detect which artifacts are in the possession of the hero. So, and then if any of those artifacts are present, then we update the hero's base movement points. We need to check if the lighthouse is owned by the same color as the hero, and then give 20 movement points on water tiles. The Barbarian doesn't have terrain penalties, and the Sorceress gets double movement on water. And I gave it kind of an alternative explanation in case that was a better way to compute it, but then I gave it a bit of an algorithm, just like a pseudocode algorithm here. I typed out a rough idea of what it should be doing. So compute the base movement for the hero based on the slowest units, and then use some function to determine the slowest units in a hero's army, and then use that to determine the base movement points. And then compute bonuses for a hero if they have these different artifacts, if they're on land, and I guess I hope it didn't get this should actually go here in the water component. Oh yeah, no, I did do this correctly. I just don't have a space. So if the hero's on land, calculating the bonuses from the land artifacts, and then if the hero's on water, calculating the bonuses from the water or the artifacts that affect movement on water. And then if it's a sorceress, if true and if she's on water, then double her movement points. And double the movement points, either the bonus from the water artifacts in 2 or her base movement points in 1. And the max is 280 using this formula if you only count those 2 artifacts. But then technically the sorceress with only fast creatures could have a multiple of each artifact up to 13 astrolabes. So because one of her 14 artifact slots would be taken up by the spellbook by default because she starts with 1. But 60 plus 13 times 40 is 580 times 2 is 1160. And I'm actually not including also, this is actually wrong because I need to make a note that it's plus 40 for the Lighthouse. 580 times 2, okay, why don't we say plus 20 for the Lighthouse is 600 times 2 is 1200. So I'll probably have to update that in my documentation. And it's good I'm double checking it. But that's the max movement points for any hero possible. And it would be the sorceress on water with the max artifacts and the Lighthouse. Now, I don't know if it's possible to have multiple lighthouses. I don't think so, because at least in the map format specification for Heroes of Might and Magic 1, you're only allowed 1 of the Dragon City and 1 of the Lighthouse, I think, per level. They're specified alongside mines as like flaggable structures. So that might be interesting to test. I might be able to see if I could sneak in a second lighthouse in a separate location by hacking a map. But I think you're only allowed 1. And certainly in every map that I've looked at, all the stock maps, there's only 1 allowed. And I believe maybe in Heroes 2 or 3, you can have multiple lighthouses. But I think in Heroes 1, it's limited to 1 lighthouse and 1 Dragon City per level. And then the algorithm for consuming hero movement points needs to be updated, and it's basically just checking if you're a barbarian, and if so, then the land types are considered 4 for horizontal and vertical, and 6 for diagonal movement. And then computing the route also needs to be updated. So before I treated them all as the same value and added a tiny penalty for diagonal moves. And now I'm just using the actual movement points computed here in the terrain movement cost chart. So doing that, we update this, and this was just my default movement point constants that I had put in route.h. And so this needs to be updated. And, I did make one slight mistake here with the absolute max value, which is an extreme corner case where the game makes just about every artifact possible the Astrolabe, and they all condense onto 1 sorceress. So very unlikely that that would occur, but let's do things correctly.